everybody. Welcome back to our Kratom Addiction and Recovery Daily Devotional series. So we're wrapping up this couple weeks in Ecclesiastes chapter 3, and it's been so cool to break down this verse by verse. We're talking about the seasons of our life and the seasons that go on around us. And so it's been really cool to go into these verses together. So we're going to be on verse 9 and 10 today. And I'm going to quickly reread the verses that we've gone over before, and then we'll get into 9 and 10. To everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck up that which is planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to get and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to cast away, a time to rend and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace. So we're on verse 9 today, which goes, and 9 and 10, which goes, "What do workers gain from their toil? I have seen the burden that God has laid upon us." So these are interesting. You know, we in the previous days, in the previous verses, we were talking about all of these seasons, and we were drawing deeper meaning from them and looking at how they apply to our lives. And today we're asking ourselves the question, what do workers gain from their toil? So when we are in these seasons, we are working through them, no matter how much it seems like we are or we aren't. In these seasons, there is change that's going on, change that's inevitable. Parts of these seasons are not easy to navigate and go through. And so, what do we gain from this work? What do we gain from the work of recovery? You know, when we're in our addiction and quitting and recovery process, it is work. It is real work. You know, when we use kratom, it's giving us this moment of peace and of joy and of thinking that everything is right with the world. And we're escaping from everything that's going on in our lives, how we're feeling, pain, sadness, sickness, whatever it may be. And we're going to something that's giving us these moments that provide us with a sense of like peace and joy for the time being. And as this progresses and we become addicted to kratom, it becomes harder and harder to manage for a lot of us. And so when we choose to quit kratom and when we choose to go through recovery, there's serious work that needs to be put in. We got used to just using kratom when things got hard or when things were good or, you know, whatever. And it got to the point where we're using it every 3 to 4 hours like I was. And so it's work to quit kratom. It's work to go through the withdrawals. It's work to go through the sleepless nights and the body pain and the anxiety and the depression. It's work to go through long-term kratom recovery. It's work to rebuild our lives after what kratom addiction did to them. So what do we gain from this? What do workers gain from their toil? It says. It then goes on to say, "I have seen the burden that God has laid on us." You know, we've all seen this burden of the work that is involved in our lives. It doesn't even need to be addiction or recovery. You know, if you're alive, you've gone through a challenge in your life. You've gone through a loss. You've gone through a struggle. And we've all seen the burdens that God has laid on us. But it asks us, what do we gain from our toil? What do workers gain from their toil? Toil is like trouble and you know, how do you explain toil? Struggle and challenge. And what do we gain from this? As I sit on the long end of the recovery process, as I'm going to be celebrating by the grace of God 3 years kratom free in about a month and a half, and actually about a month now, thank God. And I'll tell you what I've gained in long-term sobriety. I've gained a peace that is unlike anything that kratom has ever given me. I've gained a joy, a simple joy that is unlike anything that kratom or any drug ever gave me. I've gained an understanding about myself and about the world around me. I've gained an intimacy in my relationship with God that is unlike I've ever experienced before. I've gained, this channel beginning and the ability to share my story and share the things that I've learned. This is something that I've gained from my toil. I'm just giving examples of what I've experienced because I want to share with you, you know, what happened with me. We're all going to be different. You know, did I see any of these things the week after I quit kratom? No, I didn't. Did I see any of these things when I was still in kratom addiction? No, I didn't. But the toil and the work that I put in during my quitting and recovery process, I've been able to see the fruit of that labor. And this isn't saying this with any sort of pride or arrogance or bragging rights, because like I always say, it's by the grace of God alone that I'm sitting here and I'm doing this. So there's no bragging or anything like that going on. But I can sit in front of you and share with you the things that have happened in my life, especially in this past year. For me, it was a very long recovery process. I always say I don't want to scare anybody because for some of us, you know, we may be all good in like a month or so, or we may be all good. I've heard of people being fine in a week and a half after quitting. So everybody's different. But for me personally, I had a very long recovery process. And, you know, it says, what do workers gain from their toil? You know, man, I worked so hard. I'm still working so hard in this recovery season, in this recovery process. I'll probably be in recovery for the rest of my life, you know, because I know that I'll never be able to take kratom again. I know that I'll never be able to smoke weed again. I quit drinking 14 years ago, but I know that I'll never be able to drink alcohol again. And so I'll be in this, you know, for the rest of my life. But you know, the work that I've put in, especially over these past few years of quitting kratom, it's been hard work, but it has been so rewarding. So I think that that's important to focus on with this. Is like, you know, it's asking, you know, us the question. It's asking you the question, what do we gain from our toil? And that's going to be something that you answer in time. And you're going to be able to see things that you're gaining, you know, right away. Each of you, as I'm doing one-on-ones that are in your quitting and the first, you know, week or 2 weeks after quitting, you're having these little victories day by day. And I'm so blessed to be able to share them with you. So you're going to be able to see these, you know, these victories and these things that you're gaining day by day. But as you stick with it and as you put that work in, as the days turn into months, turn into years that unfold in your recovery, you're going to be able to see what your work has done in your life, and you're going to be able to reap the harvest. We talked about earlier how like we plant seeds in our recovery. And that's one of the things that we gain is, the seeds that we've planted by putting in this work, by every single day not taking kratom, by every single day making these small choices, no matter how small they are. In that video, I was a little bit more abstract, and I shared, different things about the seeds that I personally planted, but I want to bring it down to a very small level. Because on a very small level, the seeds that we plant could be as simple as waking up and, not taking kratom, waking up and, taking a shower, waking up and brushing our teeth, small little seeds that we're planting. For me, I didn't, in the worst of my addiction, I've shared this many times, I wasn't even leaving the house at certain points for like a week at a time, everybody. And I was grieving family members. There were other things that were going on. I had horrible health issues that came from my kratom addiction because I ended up losing so much weight. It whacked out my hormonal system. It totally wrecked my gut and my digestive system. So I was, dealing with other things that were going on simultaneously, but my addiction was taking front and center stage during that time. And I wasn't leaving the house. I was so freaked out about anything that had any sort of a social element to it at all. Like, I would avoid my neighbors. I would, if I had to take my dog out, I would, go at times of the day when everybody was at work, or I would wait until late at night when everybody was inside. I hated going to the grocery store, and I love food. And so, like, especially natural food stores, I've always loved them. I've always loved, like, for me, like, going to the grocery store and, like, just, like, looking at all the food and reading all the labels has always been something that I've enjoyed, and was, like, a place that I kind of, like, blew off steam, especially because I don't drink and stuff. But, like, during my addiction, I did not want to even go into a grocery store. And so, for me, putting in the work of, breaking out of that, and as I was in my recovery process, I would slowly but surely go out and start slowly but surely, not hiding and, like, dipping away from my neighbors when I would see them, and, like, greeting them. And then that led into, making little bits of small talk. How's your day going? Hope you have a good day. And, then I started going to the grocery store again. And, so it's been this slow process, and these small seeds that were planted in the beginning ended up growing. And it was through that work of planting those seeds and pushing myself outside of my comfort zone, because that's a really big part of it too, is that it's not comfortable for us when quitting kratom and in recovery. It's not comfortable for us to feel the withdrawals. It's not comfortable for us to feel anxiety and depression and anhedonia, where we don't feel pleasure in anything. It's uncomfortable for us to, face other people and, like, face ourselves and the damage that we've done in our lives and in our relationships and in our health because of kratom. But this is where the true work comes in. And so what do we gain? What do we gain from this toil? I shared with you what I gained, and I look forward to hearing from you about what you've gained too. And then verse 10 says, I have seen the burden that God has laid on us. I've said it before that, like, I believe that everything happens for a reason. I do believe that all things work for good for those who believe in God and are called according to his purpose. And the burdens that God lays on us for a season are for our good. And all of the burdens that were laid upon me, that I laid upon myself in my addiction, all worked out for good. It's taken years. Did I see it work out for good at first? No, I didn't. But as I go on 3 years here in about a month, it's all worked out for good. Every part of it, every part of the struggle, every part of the toil has worked out for good. So I want to encourage you wherever you're at. In my darkest moments, I didn't know. I didn't know how any of this was going to work out. I thought for certain that I had done permanent damage to myself, my health, my mind, my body, my life. But I didn't. And everything that I went through, all the challenges that I went through, my addiction, my quitting process, my withdrawal process, all of it ended up working out for good, and it made me a better, stronger, wiser, more empathetic, more compassionate person in the end. Excuse me again. So this burden that God lays on us in our addiction and in our recovery, it's for a purpose, as is every season is for a purpose. And that's what we're talking about in this past week and a half, and why we've slowly, day by day, broken down these verses, because every season does have a purpose, and they do not last forever. And I've found that when we do not learn these deeper lessons, and we do not learn what God is intending to teach us, that those seasons are going to last longer. I've heard of people being in kratom addiction for 10 plus years. And I can't imagine that. I've seen lifelong addicts, maybe not of kratom, but of other substances. I've seen lifelong addicts. And when we stay in that season, and when we're not learning these deeper lessons, and we are not changing and growing as people, then we stay in that season and we stay stuck. And addiction has a way of doing that to us. And it robs the joy, and it robs the potential and the purpose out of our lives. So it's very important for us to, as we go through these seasons, no matter how painful, how difficult they are, no matter how much the toil it is, no matter how difficult the toil is, no matter how heavy the burden is, that we are able to recognize that none of these seasons will last forever, and that we have the opportunity in these seasons to learn things about ourselves, and to learn things about God, and for our faith to grow, and for our wisdom and our compassion and our empathy to grow. So I encourage you to think about this today. This is also another heavy one. We've been in a couple heavy ones over the past 2 days. And I encourage you to think and pray on this one. As with any of these devotionals that we've done over these past few weeks, these are things that we can, watch one time, and then we can revisit months or even years later. And so I encourage you to do that too, because as time progresses and as seasons change, things are going to take on deeper meanings. So I encourage you to think about this, about what you will gain from your toil, and about the burden that God has laid on us in our addictions. So I encourage you to let us know how you're doing in the comments section below. And tomorrow we'll be back to wrap up the last day and the last verse that we're going to cover in Ecclesiastes chapter 3. And I love you all, and I think about and pray for you all every single day. And I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.